service people, how you doing? Everybody good? Everybody good? Great to see you today. Hey, if this is your first time with us, we're so glad you're here. Also, if you've been before and you've come back, it's great to have you back with us. Also, if you're joining us online, it's really great to have you with us as well. I don't know how many of y'all made New Year's resolutions, but I want to talk to you guys for a second. I know New Year's resolutions, some do, some don't. I didn't make any, but I want to ask you a question. And these are all rhetorical. Because I know some of you made resolutions about finances. If you made a resolution about finances, that says about 40% of people, their resolutions are about that. So in this crowd, that's probably a couple of hundred people made resolutions about finances. Like I want to get out of debt, or I want to, get control of my money better, or I want to save more, whatever those kind of things are. If that is you, I want to talk about an opportunity we've got coming up. And there are 3 opportunities, all starting in February. I really do want to encourage you to consider this. If you made a resolution about finances, it's great to make a resolution. It's better to make a resolution and have a plan. Would you agree with that? So, starting on Wednesdays in February, we're going to do a 9-week group called Financial Peace University. It's fantastic. I know a lot of people who do this. I know a lot of people they're really good with money, and then they follow the Financial Peace Plan. And we'd encourage you to consider it, be a part of it. That's maybe you that I'm talking to. Second question, maybe second situation. It's a new year, and you go, I want to grow spiritually this year, but maybe you're feeling a little stuck. Maybe you're just feeling a little stuck spiritually. And I want to encourage you to consider a group that's going to be on Monday night, starting in February, called Life's Healing Choices. Because what might be keeping us stuck is maybe some hurts we've got, maybe some habits, maybe some hang-ups. Those are things that can kind of get in our way from taking those next steps. That's an 8-week group that's going to meet on Monday nights, Life's Healing Choices. I'd encourage you to take advantage of that. Finally, third group of people. If I've not caught you yet, maybe I'll catch you with this one. Have you ever been laying awake at night thinking about your kids, particularly your teenage kids or your adult kids who are on a path moving, it seems like, farther and farther away from God, and you've laid up at night and you're like, how can I help them? What did I do wrong? You've got all these things running through your mind, and you're just trying to make sense of it all. It's like, I don't know what to do about that. If I'm describing you, I want to encourage you to participate in a group called Parents of Prodigals. It's also going to be on Monday nights. The 2 Monday night groups, Parents of Prodigals and Life's Healing Choices, are going to be at 6:30 till about 7:45. And those are going to start on February the 2nd. And then Financial Peace is going to start on Wednesday the 4th. And it's going to be from 6:30 to 7:30 on Wednesday nights when some other things are going on. Those are 3 great opportunities. If you made a New Year's resolution, or maybe you didn't and you just want to grow in one of those 3 areas, I encourage you to do it. We're here to help. We want to see you grow in your faith. Jesus wants you to have the best life possible. We do too. And if that's something that would benefit you, please take advantage of it. Here's how you do it. Chuck was mentioning the app earlier. Use the Creekside app. There's a group. There's a tab at the top called Care Groups. Click on that, and you can register through the app and Care Groups. All right. Let's jump into the message. I want you to know about the greatest example of leadership I ever saw, I ever witnessed. My younger son was 11 years old, and the greatest example came from a 12-year-old. My son was 11 years old at the time. He was playing on a new football team in a new league. It was an 11 and 12-year-old league. He was 11. There were 12-year-olds on the team. And the very first practice, the coach gets all the boys around in a circle. And there was a few parents there who were just kind of, because he invited us to be a part of it. We were standing outside the circle a little bit. And the coach, very first practice, very first thing, said, I want to go around to the team. I want to ask you boys a question. What is your goal for this year? Great question. What is your goal for this year? The first kid says, I was really amazed at how bold he was. He said, I want to be the starting running back on the team. I thought, that's bold for an 11 or 12-year-old kid, right? And he said, I want to be the starting running back. Second kid, shortest kid on the team, smallest kid on the team. What's your goal for this year? He said, I want us to go undefeated and win a championship. What do you think every kid answered after that kid gave that answer? The first kid said, I want to be the starting running back. The second kid says, I want us to be undefeated and win the championship. You know what the answer every other kid gave was, right? In that one sentence, he changed the entire tone of the team from focusing on individual goals to focusing on team goals. Every kid after that said, I want us to go undefeated and win a championship. And I'm not going to keep you in suspense. That's exactly what happened. That's a team that had a purpose, they had a goal, and they won every game, they went undefeated, and they won a championship. The person who has the greatest influence in the lives of others says this: it's not about me, but we. It's not about me, but we. And hey, that's terrible English. I don't think you should write a sentence like that. I think that's terrible English. It's not about me, but we. But it works, and we're going to run with it because it's so true. The most influential people say, it's not about me, but we. So here's my question for you, a very important question. It's the first Sunday of the year. Here's the question. Do you want to have a better life? Do you want to have a better life? Or do you want the people around you to have a better life? Now, the rub for a lot of us, if we're honest, and we should be, deep down inside, it's likely we prefer, and it's natural, to be a little self-centered over making other people's lives better. Agree? Yes, you agree with that. It's just natural. We prefer to be a little self-centered rather than making the lives of those around us better. We often say, I'm going to find my own happiness. And everybody can find their own happiness, and they can find theirs. And I don't want to get in the way, but I'm going to find mine. They can find their happiness too. But listen to this. The most content, the most secure people in the world are selfless people who quietly raise the quality of life of those around them. We may not even notice them at first, but we feel their impact everywhere. They make spaces safer. They make relationships better. They make burdens lighter. They help other people feel seen and valued and heard. And they also, in the church, multiply the heart of Christ. They love others in ways that help others have greater hope. So let me ask you this question again. Do we want to have a better life, or do we want to make the lives of those around us better? Is it going to be me, or is it going to be we? See, Christianity, which is about the teachings of Jesus, we look at these teachings of Jesus and it's like so paradoxical. Like we go, this is this, but it means that. It's like all confusing stuff. So many principles in the Bible just don't make sense. They sound backwards, like the first will be last and the last will be first. That makes no sense. Or power is found in weakness. Freedom comes through surrender. Giving leads to receiving. Dying leads to life. And today we're beginning this new four-part message series called Maximum Impact. And the paradox in this series is that if we want to have the life we've always wanted, we can't keep living for ourselves. We can't keep focusing our lives on accumulating respect or gaining wealth or aiming at things that we think are going to make us happy. Because the Bible says things like this. You want to save your life? You've got to lose it. It says, whoever wants to be great among you must become the servant of all. So this year, we're starting off with a challenge. This year, will you consider putting the needs of others ahead of your own? And so today, as we begin this series, we're going to begin with a very practical way we can make a significant difference. How many of you are parents of preschoolers? Let me hear you. Hey, you're up early today. That's unusual, right? You've probably been up since 4:30. Kids probably already had a nap. It's probably been a rough day. You all want to be better parents, right? You parent of preschoolers. Listen to this. A 2025 study with preschoolers showed that positive encouragement not only reduced anxiety and negative emotions, it also increased connectivity in brain areas linked to emotional regulation and cognitive control. Isn't that fascinating? The power of positive encouragement. How many of you have ever coached athletes? Coaches, you ever coached athletes or teachers or whatever? Raise your hands. Let me see you. Okay, some of you worked with younger people, right? You already know, if you've ever been a coach, that the best athletes, they want to be coached hard. They want to achieve their greatest potential. A 2024 study investigated the effects of verbal encouragement on strength, endurance, and mental toughness. And in all three areas, verbal encouragement helped athletes achieve better results. Athletes who were verbally encouraged were stronger, had more stamina, and were mentally tougher than those who weren't. Fascinating. Maybe you work with others. Maybe you lead a team at work. Leadership research in 2025 confirmed that encouraging language and constructive feedback were strongly linked to better team management, clarity of purpose, and project success. All of this is fascinating because God's word, written thousands of years ago, says in Hebrews 3:13, encourage one another daily. Do you know why we need encouragement daily? Why we're to encourage one another daily? Because disappointment and discouragement comes every day. Like, how many of you got on the scale after Christmas? And you're like, oh, stupid 5 pounds, stupid 10 pounds. Got on the scale, I was like, I can't believe it. Stupid. It's just stupid, right? I think a lot of you felt like I do. If you lost weight, God bless you. God bless you. Most of us didn't. Would you turn to the person next to you? Would you tell them how fabulous they look? Do that. Tell the person next to you, you look fabulous. You look fabulous. Listen, I know that you gained 5 pounds. I know that. But how much does it help to hear just encouraging words? Listen, okay, stop. We're going on. Stop encouraging one another. People and companies, they spend a lot of time and money researching how to be better at parenting and teaching and coaching and leading and building others up. And yet, 2,000 years ago, God's word, inspired by the one who created us and knows us best, was already saying, you want to make a difference in the lives of others? Encourage one another. Do you know what the word encourage means? It's not super hard. It doesn't mean to encourage. It doesn't mean that. It means to give courage. The word encourage literally means to give courage. You're not just saying things nice to make people feel better. You are giving them courage. You want to have a maximum impact? Give courage to those around you. And there is probably no better example of this in the Bible than a man by the name of Joseph. Joseph. This is not Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus. This is Joseph from an island called Cyprus. We read about his story in the first half of the book of Acts, which is a book in the Bible that tells us about the beginning of the church. Now, it's important to understand a little context here, because after the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, the news of Jesus' resurrection was so captivating that people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, were becoming followers of Jesus. The church was just exploding, like in growth. And there were so many good things going on that Luke, a doctor, said, I want to write this down. He also wrote the book of Luke. He only wrote 2 books, but there's actually more material in those 2 books than in the writings of Paul, who we're going to talk about later, in his 13 books. I mean, there's a lot of detail. If you want to understand the beginning of the church, read the book of Acts. A lot of great stories. And one of the people he talks about is this guy by the name of Joseph. And we're going to look at 3 snapshots, 3 different periods of Joseph's life and how he made a huge impact. Look at Acts 4. This is the first one we're going to look at. It's Acts 4, verses 32 through 37. If you want to follow along in your Bible or follow along on the screen, you can. It says, all the believers were united in heart and mind, and they felt that what they owned was not their own, so they shared everything they had. The apostles testified powerfully to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and God's great blessing was upon them all. There were no needy people among them, because those who owned land or houses would sell them and bring the money to the apostles to give those in need. For instance, there was Joseph, the one the apostles nicknamed Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. He was from the tribe of Levi and came from the island of Cyprus, and he sold a field he owned and brought the money to the apostles. So the church is exploding in growth. Exponentially multiplying, not just adding, multiplying. but there weren't any needy persons. There were people who were poor. They might not have had food, or they might not have had a place to stay, or they might not have had clothes, but their needs were being met. Now understand this, it wasn't socialism. The first church wasn't a socialist community. It wasn't a communist community. It's not socialism, it's not communism. It's generosity. It's generosity. People had been blessed, and they wanted to be a blessing others. They wanted to help meet one another's needs. They didn't throw all their money into a pot and then just disperse it. No, it wasn't that. It was generosity. And so along comes Joseph. And the leaders had given him a nickname, Son of Encouragement, Barnabas. And Joseph sees the opportunity to make a difference, and so he sells a piece of land, he takes the money, and he just gives it to the church leaders and says, do with it what you want. Now, I think we live in a unique time in history, because there's a word that as I was preparing for the message that came to my mind. It's a word that's become popular, and you're going to hear the word and go, yeah, 5 years ago I didn't know that word. The word is curated. Are you familiar with this word, curated? So much of life now is curated. It's exactly the way you want it. Like whatever you want, whatever you need, you can have it exactly that way. We can go through life having everything exactly how we like it. How many mattresses are there for sale? Why is that? But you know what? Whatever kind of mattress you want, there's one for you. Or how about pillows? There's a billion kinds of pillows. I can't even go on Amazon and figure out a pillow to buy. Or you ever walk into a grocery store and try to figure out a mustard to buy? There's 1,000 kinds of mustard. Why is that? And we go through all these things, and over again, we see that we can have life exactly the way we want it. That's why when you're on social media, you have an algorithm, because what it's doing is it's curating content specifically for you. It's all designed to be exactly the way we want it. So the question we're always asking is, what do I want? Because I can have it. You can have it exactly the way you want. And it's like, will this make me happier? Will this bring me happiness? Will this bring me contentment? But if we're always thinking, how can I be happier? That's just a flat out problem. Maybe you heard the joke about the man who told his wife, when I die, I want you to put all my money in the casket with me. I'm going to take it with me. And she said, okay. And at the funeral, right before they closed the casket, she took an envelope and she put it in the casket, and they shut the door. And a friend later said to her, they said, you didn't put all his money in the casket, did you? She goes, of course. I wrote him a check. Now, to those of you born in the last 30 years, before Venmo, a check was something people used to write in order to pass money along to other people. That's what a check is. But listen to what Jesus said in Luke 12:15. He said, watch out. Watch out. Jesus is saying this. Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. That's why people like Barnabas stand out. That's why encouragers stand out. Because they made the decision they want to make a difference in the lives of others. And they aren't bogged down in self-centered thinking. So they are givers. Encouragers are givers. They give of their time, their talents. They give of their resources. They give of their words. They give encouragement. They are generous. And when I think of people who live this way, you need to understand, if you don't realize this yet, you need to wake up. Because the people who are generous are the happiest people I know. They're the most content. They're the most secure. They are the happiest people I know. I have never met anyone who's generous and bitter. Just never seen it. I've never met anyone who is generous and angry. No, they're literally the happiest, most secure people I know. Encouragers are generous. It's we before me. And Barnabas was an encourager. Second time we read about Barnabas is found in Acts 9. Now, to set this up, I need to tell you about Saul. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Saul was an enemy of that church. As the church exploded in growth, Saul was a Jewish man who said, I'm concerned because all these people are now becoming followers of Jesus. And he did desire to serve God with all his heart. He really did. I want to serve God with all my heart, he said. But he was misguided because what he began doing is he began persecuting the church. He didn't see the power of the truth. He began persecuting the church. He began pulling families apart and throwing people in prison. And if some died, that was fine to Paul. He was okay with it. So Saul is experiencing this thing where he's just like fighting against the growth of the church. And he's on his way to a city called Damascus. And on this road to Damascus, he's blinded by a light. If you've ever heard the phrase, a Damascus Road conversion, this is why it's called that. He's blinded by a light, and he hears a voice. And it's Jesus who is appearing to him in a vision. And he says, Saul, why do you persecute me? And Paul realizes, I had been going in the wrong direction. And after that moment, he totally turns his life around. He does a 180-degree turn and begins following Jesus. He becomes part, or wants to become part of the church, which leads us to Acts 9. Listen to what it says. When Saul arrived in Jerusalem, so, okay, let's set this up. Understand, he was on the road to Damascus, goes to Damascus after the vision of Jesus, then comes back to Jerusalem. When he arrived in Jerusalem, he tried to meet with the believers, but they were all afraid of him. They didn't believe he had truly become a believer. Then Barnabas brought him to the apostles and told him how Saul had seen the Lord on the way to Damascus and how the Lord had spoken to Saul. He, Barnabas, also told them that Saul preached boldly in the name of Jesus in Damascus. So Saul stayed with the apostles and went all around Jerusalem with them, preaching boldly in the name of the Lord. So when Saul becomes a Christian, the church leaders and the whole church are afraid of him because they thought, he's going to find out who we are, where we live. He's going to have us arrested, thrown in prison, maybe even die. So they didn't want anything to do with him. Now Barnabas, not the son of encouragement, he saw the sincerity of Saul's conversion from a persecutor of Christians to a follower of Jesus himself. Barnabas convinced the church leaders to trust Saul. An encourager sees the value in people that others don't see. An encourager sees the value in others, in people that others don't see. They believe in people who others doubt. They see what people can become, just not what they are. An encourager sees the good when others sees the bad. When everyone was focused on seeing Saul's past, Barnabas saw that God was going to move in his life and do great things in him. Have you ever known somebody who did that for you? You know how powerful that can be when somebody sees in you something that nobody else does. When I was in high school, I had a very small part. When I was a senior in high school, I had a very small part in a play called The Miracle Worker. You know the story. You know the story of Helen Keller. My part was very small. I had the opening line of the play. I think I had like 3 total words. Welp, she'll live. How did I do? Very good, right? Thank you, really. 3 words. Well, she'll live. I might have had a couple others. I don't remember them. I think is it really 3 or 4 words? If she'll is a contraction of, maybe I had 4 words. So, well, she will live. Anyway, long story. No reason to go there anymore. That was my part. But I learned the story of Helen Keller. I know she was around a long time ago. Born in 1880. Helen Keller was 19 months old when she became deaf and blind. And it became very complicated trying to raise her. She was wild. She didn't know what was going on. She's a 2-year-old trying to figure out life, and she can't see anything or hear anything. She was wild. She's uncontrollable. And nobody saw anything in her except a life probably filled with isolation. Along comes Anne Sullivan. Anne Sullivan begins to work with Helen Keller, and she begins trying to teach her that there is more to life than a dark hall of sounds and smells. It's like there's a world there that needed to be explored. And the turning point came because Anne Sullivan would spell out words using sign language into Helen Keller's hand. And she was trying to make the connection that there are symbols that connect with things. Like as water was running over Helen Keller's hand, Anne Sullivan was spelling out water, W-A-T-E-R, over and over again, trying to get her to make the connection. And there came a point where Helen Keller's mind just, the switch was flipped. And Helen Keller went on to, crazy, graduate from college, become a lecturer, a speaker, become an author. She was a global advocate for people with disabilities, all because one person saw something in her that nobody else saw. Listen, if Helen Keller, deaf and blind, can become an author and a speaker, whoever it is in your life who others might dismiss, don't you do it. Don't do it. See the possibilities. Like Barnabas, like Anne Sullivan, an encourager doesn't ignore reality, but it's believing God can do more with someone than the world expects. It's seeing the value in people that others don't see. They say it's we before me. Third snapshot of Barnabas in Acts 15. Saul eventually became known as Paul. And he becomes who I believe is the most influential follower of Jesus who ever lived. We read about how Barnabas and Saul would travel together. Barnabas and Paul would travel together. They'd travel to cities that had never heard about Jesus. They would preach about Jesus. They would start churches and then move on to another city. I mean, the work that Paul did was amazing. Like I mentioned earlier about Luke writing 2 of the books in the New Testament, Paul is credited with 13, maybe 14 of the books of the Bible, of the New Testament. Not sure about Hebrews, but at least 13. So, started lots of churches, wrote lots of the Bible. Well, Paul and Barnabas are on their first missionary journey. And they've taken along a guy with them by the name of John Mark. And John Mark is a younger guy. And he's got a lot to learn. But it was evidently for John Mark a terrible experience. Something happened. We don't know what. But he basically said, I've got to go home. I can't keep doing this. And he leaves Paul and Barnabas as they're on this first missionary journey. So John Mark, Paul doesn't have a very high opinion of John Mark. He thinks he's quit on them. You got the setting? Okay. Acts 15. After some time, Paul said to Barnabas, let's go back and visit each city where we previously preached the word of the Lord to see how the new believers are doing. Barnabas agreed and wanted to take along John Mark. But Paul disagreed strongly since John Mark had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in their work. Their disagreement was so sharp that they separated. Barnabas took John Mark with him and sailed for Cyprus. An encourager is someone who recognizes people need second, sometimes multiple chances. An encourager is someone who recognizes that people need second, sometimes multiple chances. John Mark had quit on them before, but Barnabas wanted to give him a second chance. And Paul said, no, I'm not taking that kid with me again. He's not going with us. Big argument, and they split, and they go separate ways. Paul goes one way, Barnabas takes John Mark with him and goes the other. And interestingly, this is the last time we read about Barnabas in the book of Acts. The last view we have of him is choosing to invest in someone who needed a second chance. But it's not the last time we read of John Mark. A second chance often begins when someone is willing to see a person, not just their past and not just their mistakes. A long time ago, I read about a young business owner, not a business owner, a business executive who made a mistake for his company, and his company lost like $10 million. And the next morning, he went into the owner's office and he said, I'm sure you'll want my resignation. I've come prepared to give it to you. And the owner said, resign? Are you nuts? I just spent $10 million on your education. You're not going anywhere. That's a man who knows the power of a second chance. A lot of people need another chance. A second chance often begins when someone refuses to define somebody by their worst chapter. And you know what that's like, because you've been given second chances. But yet we still, in our minds, we wrestle with this idea of giving other people second chances. And maybe for you, it's a son or it's a daughter who's struggling in school or struggling with grades. Or maybe it's a teenage kid who, like, you're going, what in the heck are they thinking? It could be a young adult kid you've got who's, like, still trying to get all the pieces figured out. Like, just things aren't making sense for them yet. It could be a spouse. Could be a parent, could be a coworker, could be just about anybody. But what would happen if we gave them a second chance? I'm not saying give them a second chance if they're going to take advantage of you. No. What if they really want a second chance or another chance? What would happen if we were willing to be patient with them the way God has been patient with us? Here's why this oftentimes in the long run pays off. It's 2 Timothy 4:11. 2 Timothy 4:11. Paul is lonely. He's lonely. Like he's discouraged. And he reaches out to a young minister in the faith named Timothy. Now, we've not talked about Timothy. But Paul says, Timothy, I want you to come to me. I need your help. And then Paul says this, and bring along John Mark with you, because he's going to be my right-hand man. Isn't that fascinating? John Mark, who Paul had given up on, but who Barnabas hadn't, who Barnabas gave a second chance, Paul is now saying, send John Mark, because he's going to be my biggest helper. All because Barnabas gave him a second chance. The encourager says, we before me, and we never know how our encouragement might change the trajectory of someone's life who needs a second chance. Here's your challenge for this week. Here's your challenges for this week. Would you catch somebody doing something good and encourage them for it? Would you catch somebody doing something that is maybe out of their comfort zone, but you just say, hey man, great job. Thank you. When you think about somebody, would you shoot them a text and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. Just wanted you to know how much I appreciate you and the impact you've had in my life. Would you call at least one person? And would you say, hey, I'm just thinking about you, and I just got to tell you how much I appreciate you. Would you do that this week? Because you might not get a phone call, you might not get a text, but somebody else needs that. And you'll find that because you've been an encourager, you're going to be blessed. Would you do that this week? Would you do that this week? And I hope you hear this truth. I hope you've heard this truth. Jesus doesn't define you by your worst mistake. And you don't have to hide from Jesus when you make a mistake. You don't have to run from God. You can run to him because he offers grace. Maybe you feel defined by your mistakes, your bad choices, or by your regrets, or by what others say about you. You got to hear this. Jesus doesn't roll that way. You are valuable to him, and he invites us to start fresh with him. The most encouraging thing I could say to you, the most encouraging thing is that you are loved by God. And he loves you so much despite everything you've done that he gave his one and only son, Jesus, to die on the cross for you and pay for our sin because of his love for you. I hope you're encouraged by that. I hope that this week, even though it's hard, or this month is going to be hard, or maybe this year is hard, you'll always remember that you have value in the eyes of Jesus, and he loved you so much, he gave his body and blood so you can know grace and freedom. So we're going to shift the environment. We're going to shift the focus, the atmosphere, right now. One of the things we do every week is we want to remember what Jesus has done by giving his body and blood for us on the cross. And so when you came in, if you're able to pick up your communion, go ahead and have that ready. If you came in today and you didn't pick up communion, the ushers are coming down front, down the aisles. If you just raise your hand, get their attention, give them a wave. They want to make sure you have communion. But what we're going to do is we're going to take just a moment to quietly reflect, be grateful, show gratitude to God for what he's done in sending his son. And we're going to remember about the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. And we're going to ask for forgiveness. And we're going to be grateful because this is what we get to do. Not what we have to do. We get to do these things because of what Jesus has done for us. And then after we've got just a little bit of time to reflect, I'll come back up and we'll have a word of prayer. So let's take a little bit of